I've been trying to act in this neurotypical way and it's not working and I'm exhausted. The ways it shows up for me most predominantly, one is like a feeling of urgency, like all the time. Everything is urgent. It feels very overwhelming and I struggle to prioritize, okay, let's do this first or then this next and this next and this next.
So obviously, I think you mentioned coming into your 36 years really when you started to have a relationship with ADHD. What's been your biggest realization or biggest learning as you're navigating this journey about yourself?
That I'm not a problem.
Welcome back to Over Dinner. I'm Jarrod.
And I'm Dr. Nikki. We're not experts. We're just two people doing the work together and apart.
Sharing real and unfiltered conversations about the human experience. And today, we'll be talking about Nikki's human experience. Is that good?
Yeah, it was great.
Good. We mentioned a few times on the podcast, my wife, Nikki, lovely Nikki, is neurodiverse with ADHD. Yes?
Yes.
So we thought it'd be an interesting episode, talk through probably a few lenses, just the experience for her overall, the experience of how that plays out in our relationship, possibly my experience, how I see ADHD or how I see it
For sure.
playing out, but also maybe some curiosity on my end of maybe some things that I don't know, maybe I should know that I think would help us.
Great job.
Cool.
I'm interested to dive in.
Let's dive in. You want to start?
No, ask me a question.
Oh, great. So I'll talk about my experience, not like overall experience, but where I've had to move along in this journey. Because obviously I don't have experience with ADHD. I have experience with some other things of like, I need to have my routine and certain things like that. It has been challenging at times because I wasn't as curious and understanding. I was like, why don't you just do this? Like, it's pretty easy. Like specifically, let's talk about, I have a bunch of things to do. How do I plan out my time? I'm like, well, you get the list, you prioritize it, and then you just say, how long will each thing take? And then you look at your calendar and you plug them in. She goes, okay.
But I do that.
You do a good job.
I plug everything in my calendar.
No, you do a good job.
But what is executive functioning?
Executive functioning is being able to separate those things apart, right?
No.
Great. Let's talk about that.
No. Go ahead.
All right, let me ask some of my questions. I wrote some questions down.
You want to finish telling your experiences?
I think my experience is that I was challenged because I didn't understand it and because I got ADHD. So I think my logical brain works very differently than yours. And where maybe sometimes I didn't think it was ADHD showing up, that there were just some things that you could do differently, right? That you could approach your days or approach some things differently that maybe frustrated me a little bit. And maybe that came out at times because I really didn't understand and hadn't taken the time to ask you or done my own research on ADHD in general, and what that experience is like.
I have two questions. One,
but I'm supposed to ask you questions.
Oh, I know, but do you feel like you opened up to this based off the fact that we have an autistic child? So it like changed your perspective on things?
One thing, yes.
Okay. And then two, knowing me now, do you see me as ADHD?
Yes.
So things in the past make sense, or
everything makes sense. You're very ADHD. You're very ADHD.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so I don't mask it well.
I would say there's on a spectrum. I'd say you're on the higher end of ADHD.
You do?
Yeah.
You think I have high support needs as ADHD? I do not.
When I look at the autism spectrum, it's different than the ADHD spectrum. I just think the way I look at it is the world is a lot more challenging because it's not set up for someone like you.
Yes.
And so that to me, it's like a really big challenge. It pushes up against you. I think a little bit more than maybe some other people who might have more minor forms or less support needs. And I don't like saying support needs. I just think the way the world is set up is very challenging in the way your brain works.
Okay. That's interesting because
and the way people are.
The reason why I asked this is because I was like, do you feel like I mask it well? Or / do you feel like I masked it for a good part of our relationship? And then like
I don't think you mask it. I just don't think I was aware. I just think, personality and who you were and things like that. And I think as you get in a relationship, you probably were trying to mask it and probably,
Well, I pretty much tried to mask it my whole life.
And I think now that we're going on 15 years being together, I think you're just full of yourself with me now.
Well, according to our last episode, I'm not honest about everything.
Well, like 99.9% of things you're honest with.
Okay. All right. So go ahead.
All right. So let's start really generally. If someone were to ask you, what is ADHD? What would you say?
I would say attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. is not exactly that. It should actually have a completely different name. I think they've called it like executive functioning disorder, or there's another one that I was thinking of. But when you hear the word hyperactivity, you're automatically thinking about 4-year-old little boys running around and not being able to sit still. The way hyperactivity manifests for me is racing thoughts in my mind. So you can't tell that I'm like hyperactive. Anyways, that's a whole other track. This is another thing about ADHD is that
You're going to experience it live right here, guys.
we have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things,
Yep.
but that doesn't necessarily mean it goes super deep into every single topic, except ones that we're really hyper interested in, like
Gotcha.
very much like Jake's interests, right? But people think ADHD is like, oh, I'm so distracted, like squirrel. Like they make these jokes, like squirrel, I'm distracted, or like I can't focus on something. It's not it. Like there are some days that it's like my brain is offline and I cannot.
You're unplugged.
I'm unplugged according to episode 31. I'm unplugged. But it is a neurological condition. In my perception, my opinion is that it's a learning difference, a cognitive difference. But it affects how you focus, organization, your emotion regulation, which is why in our last episode we talked about little things, reactions can be big.
Yeah.
And that is part of my emotional regulation. Anyways, what were you going to say?
Well, my next question was, how does ADHD show up specifically for you? Obviously, it's different for everybody, but specifically, how does it show up for you?
Yeah. It's really interesting because I was diagnosed ADHD when I was 10. I went on medication around 11, 12 years old, and I turned 36 this past year, and this is when I finally understood that I had ADHD. Even though I have 2 therapists as parents, I did not understand how ADHD showed up for me. All I knew is that there was something different in my brain and why school was hard, relationships were challenging, or following through on tasks, or prioritizing what needs to be done first, and then initiating those tasks. I didn't understand all of that. So Jake receiving his diagnosis and then me doing a deep dive into autism, and there are overlap between autism and ADHD. And we have distinct differences too, but there is overlap. And that's why sometimes people are misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, like there can be discrepancies there. So I was doing all these therapies for him to support the way his brain worked. And I'm like, I've done nothing for the way my brain works. I've been trying to act in this neurotypical way, and it's not working, and I'm exhausted. So I would say the ways it shows up for me most predominantly, one is like a feeling of urgency, like all the time. I'm like, let's say there's a lot going on. It feels like it's all in this one big tunnel that there's no order to it. Everything is critical. Everything is urgent. It feels very overwhelming. And that's part of the executive functioning piece is that I struggle to prioritize, okay, let's do this first, or then this next, and this next, and this next. So that's one piece. Second, I can be very deliberate in my decision making on certain things. And then other areas, I feel like we've had this conversation, I think, about the mental load of like buying gifts, for example, for our kids. And you say to me, well, I know that you're still going to check it once I do this whole list. So part of the reason I want you to take that off my load is because I will pick what I want to get the kids, and then I have to do 900 other research to research this, and then I can't decide, and it becomes super overwhelming. I've actually utilized ChatGPT to help me with decision making. I can give you a perfect example. So I'm trying to take better care of my hair, and it's not something that's like high on my priority list, but I'm realizing it needs to be taken care of. So I had ChatGPT give me like a breakdown of different shampoos and conditioners and like bonds, like all these different things to take care of my hair. And I said, I want it in this price range, high end and low end, like give me a mix. So she comes up with this plan. She's a she, her name is B, but she comes up with this plan and she's like, here's the links for you to purchase it. I could not buy it. So I was like, are you sure these are the right ones? And she was like, yes, but here's a couple other options if you want to try these. And I kept fighting her, going like, but I don't know, like, why is this so hard for me to buy this? Why is it so hard? She literally responded back, being ADHD, this can be very paralyzing to make decisions. And she wrote in bold, trust me, it's the right call. And so to just follow up with that, beyond decision making is perfectionism.
Mm.
So like I feel like I have to make these perfect decisions because this one decision I make will impact everything else.
Mm.
So it's like
Because everything ties together.
everything ties together. Yes, I make connections really easily, but it just feels like an overwhelmed pressure to get it right, to do it right. A lot of pressure on me all the
And
time.
everything's
And I
important all the
think
time.
that there's two pieces of the perfectionism. One, I think, is from lived experience of internalized messages that I was not good enough or that I was doing something wrong, or that the famous one is if you could just reach your potential, like
Mm.
you just have so much unmet potential. And so many ADHD people sit with that and they're like, I'm just not reaching my potential, but that potential is
And
neurotypical.
somebody's wrong with them.
It's not, you're never going to reach a neurotypical potential. Like you're going to reach your ADHD potential. So I feel like when I was younger, I read a study that said children by the age of 12 have received 20,000 negative messages
Mm.
that they've internalized, that they're just really unworthy, they're stupid, of so many things, right? So, that when that becomes the foundation of your mind, you then begin to try and become perfect. Like, how can
Because
I
you
make
believe
this
that
better?
it's true.
I need to be better. I need to be better. It's not good enough. So in our last episode, we talked about the pie and that the first round like wasn't good enough. Like because for whatever reason, it was too dry and like I got frustrated and being exhausted and being overwhelmed and overstimulated, it's a perfect storm for me then to have a meltdown or to have a big reaction. My emotional regulation is now dysregulated, and I'm gonna have a huge reaction to this fucking pie crust that is no longer viable. It's probably been fine, but it wasn't, in my opinion. So it doesn't just become the pie crust, it becomes all of those messages. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
You're not perfect. And then I'd also say a big one for me is energy and time management. I burn out fast. I go at a very high speed, especially if I have a goal, I want to like hit it. And then I don't manage my energy. I don't do little bits every day. It's like this a lot one day and a little the next day, a lot next day. And yeah, and then also talking a lot.
I want to go, I'm going to jump around because of something you just said. So, in that pie example that you gave, I guess the question is, how do I better support you? Because what I did, which made it even worse, two things I did was I can help. Let me jump in. Let me jump in and we can do it together because then that makes you feel, well, of course, I can't do it myself. I'm inadequate. And then the other thing is like, I'll just go out and buy a pie. Again, back to the story of I'm not good enough. I'm inadequate. I can't do it. I need Jarrod's help, or I screwed it up and he has to go buy a pie. So, in those moments of the perfectionism or when you're having one of those experiences, how as a partner could I better support you in those moments?
Hindsight's 2020. It's like what I'm playing out in my head. Because what Jared just said, like if him jumping in and like saving the day kind of thing, it only makes me feel worse about myself, right? It only makes me feel like I'm inadequate, as you just put it. So two things came. One is like coming back to like logic, right? So what do you need to do? What needs to happen? How long does it take? Do you have enough? Like going through those steps. That doesn't mean it's going to totally bring me down, but like coming back into like, okay, this really takes no time. It's four ingredients. It's no big deal. Not saying that, right? It's not a big deal.
Yeah, not saying it's not a
Not,
big deal.
yeah, but just like
I've said
painting.
that before. That doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like painting what is happening. And then the second thing is, I think it's actually like acknowledgement of, I know how much you care about this.
Mm.
I know how much effort you're putting into it. I'm really excited to eat the pie. I know you care a lot. It's really good. Um, I think offering help is okay with I think I've said this to you, I think before. It's like about acknowledgement. I see what you're doing. I know this isn't easy, even though it could be easy. Would you like some help? No, you don't want any help. Okay. Well, God, I don't even know.
You think it changes moment to moment or experience to experience?
Yeah, I think that there's some times where I need something and then other times,
So is
but
it the ask?
for the most part, what is coming to me is acknowledgement because what happened after, right? I told you that I really was hoping that you were going to say that you were proud of me for keep going because I did remake the pie crust and they were perfect. And
You're
so
great.
I was really happy with them. I wish they were a little bit thicker on the top, but I'll work on that next year.
Okay.
Um, but I think it's I've had the meltdown. I went through it, and then like I'm proud of you for keep going.
Keep going. Yeah.
But I didn't hear it, even if you did say it.
I did say it.
I think ultimately my answer would probably be really different in the actual moment.
Mm.
And one of my challenges is that I get really blinded by my emotions. And something I just learned from a neurodivergent coach that I started working with. She taught me about the mood meter and there's four quadrants. And I
You
brought
talked
this
about
up
this, I
in
think.
the autism episode. And when we're in three of the quadrants, the blue, the yellow, and the red and yellow are high energy and blue is low energy. And the red is unpleasant feelings, the blue is unpleasant feelings, the yellow is pleasant feelings, but we should not be making decisions in yellow, red, or blue.
Mm,
The only place we should be making decisions is when we are back at our home base in green.
mm.
And so I feel that I get really blinded when I'm in those states, and it's hard for me to see anything else. And so in red zone, the idea is to get yourself out of
I
that.
would say you step away or
No, is to actually ask yourself, like, what am
mm,
I really feeling?
mm.
Like, what is this really about? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it like, what am I really feeling so that you can lower your temperature? In the blue zone is to treat yourself really
Mm.
kindly, right? Like, I know it's a bummer. I know you really wanted to make this pie and it sucks, like be kind to yourself, right? So I'm,
I guess to those, you asking yourself those questions, would it be helpful if your partner asked those questions? If I said, what's really going on? Like, what are you really
yes,
upset about? And then how can you be kind to yourself in this situation? I know you're frustrated, but how can you be kind to yourself? Would that be helpful?
the second part feels condescending, but the
Okay.
first part does not.
Okay.
The first part is like, what is really going on?
Yeah.
So then it's like, I can then say, I feel really disappointed. I feel like I can't do anything right. Like, I
Mm.
really wanted to make this pie. I'm like, why can't I just do it? Feeling so much easier for other people.
Yeah.
And then it opens a conversation, right? And then the support can come in of, how like the acknowledgement that you're trying and you're doing this thing. And then also then the logical piece of like, here's what we have all this stuff. We can do it again, right? And then the third part, which would be like, I'm really proud of you for doing that.
Okay. Cool. All right. Next question. So we kind of got generally how does ADHD show up for you? My next one, what are the biggest areas it impacts?
I would say right now in my life with what I manage from motherhood, autism, a business, soon to be business, my social life, my marriage, my health, like all these elements, balancing all of that
Mm,
is really, really hard. And I struggle to prioritize. I feel basically overwhelmed and overstimulated every single day.
mm,
And because of the feeling I have about urgency and everything needs to be done, like I don't get to just be like relaxed.
yeah.
So I just feel like a lot of pressure. I feel overstimulated most time with having two young children, with their antics that come along with that. Some days I have more of a bandwidth than others. If I'm solo parenting, that battery's gonna be much less than if I have you. Sometimes I really have to walk away because of my frustration. And I know that what I'm frustrated about has nothing to do with my child. It has to do with me. So I'm not going to stand like Sydney threw the glass candles into the bathtub. And I just walked into the closet because like she doesn't know. She has no idea. I'm like, I'm going to stand there and yell at her. No. So that also is very exhausting managing my emotions
Mm,
because it feels like I'm suppressing a lot of things. But I know that for my 4 and 2-year-old, it's necessary,
yeah.
right? It's necessary.
And that's why
So
it's probably so important for you for the self-care and outlets that you need to have, which I think you built better systems and than you had before, is you need to have that release and know what those releases are and what
Yeah.
you can do and making sure they're a part of your day when you can, right?
Yeah, when I can, right? When I can. I would say that also a big part for me is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. It's paired very much with ADHD. All of us don't want to be rejected. It never feels great, but some individuals with ADHD have a much higher sensitivity to rejection, and it's a perceived rejection.
Yeah.
It's like not even necessarily a rejection that's actually happening. It's a complete story that's created based off our own perception of feeling left out or feeling like we're not liked or we're not worthy to be a part of it. This has been a really big issue for me, not just in my social life, but like the thought of cold calling, like in a sales role. I won't even call family members. I don't want to pick up the phone. I'm
Mm.
really uncomfortable. In the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, this one phone call that I have to make to a family member, there could be a no attached to it. And so like me sitting with that is uncomfortable. So that one's a big deal. I would say socially, I struggle a lot with understanding social landscape. And I thought that I understand um psychology. I understand the human behavior, but I don't think I actually internalize some of these things. Like I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was raised by two therapists. I believe that I'm a very emotionally intelligent person. I'm highly empathetic. I'm an empath, but I feel like majority of it is cognitive.
Well, the social norms that we've created, they just don't make sense.
They don't make sense
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still struggle.
You
It's a
don't get
30
why
thing.
this has to happen, or you
Yeah.
can't do this, or you're supposed to
Yeah.
say this, or supposed to do this, and you
Yeah.
don't. It's like, but why?
And then people think I'm like really high energy and I'm like really like outgoing and I'm an extrovert. And that I've learned over time is more of a mask than actually who I am. I think I have an energetic, bubbly personality, but for the most part, I actually think that I'm much more introverted. And now I wonder, like, is that conditioned to be introverted? Because being extroverted, I only got ostracized for. Like when I was, speaking out or doing different things, maybe I am extroverted, but I don't know. It's just really
Yeah.
interesting.
What is something I should know that would help me better understand you?
I don't know. Two things come to mind. First is things are harder for me. And that's really uncomfortable for me to even say, but I do need to help. And I really value a partnership and like when you're able to be there for the like kind of the back and forth. When I have something that is stewing, and because anxiety is also very highly likely with an ADHD mind, like something stewing, it's really helpful for me to talk it out because otherwise I'm just sitting with it in my
Mhm.
mind. And when it's somebody that I really trust, it can really help bring me down. So it feels very cloudy in my mind sometimes. And it's helpful for me to walk through it with somebody. So they also call body doubling is a really great technique for ADHD individuals. I struggle to go do the returns throughout the week. Instead of just dropping the kids off and then going straight to Whole Foods to do an Amazon return, that is never part of my routine. It's like I drive home. But on the weekends, if I have you there, it becomes a much easier task. So sometimes things get done because my partner is there, and that's really helpful. So if there are things you really want me to do, like do them with me or do something alongside that task. Second thing I would say is I need encouragement.
Hmm.
Like I really need support and encouragement. Like I need to hear that I'm doing a good job. And then lastly, I'd say transitions or changes and things are actually way harder for me than I thought.
Hmm. Give me an example.
I had plans to do swim lessons at a certain time on a certain day. Thought that was all planned to go down. And then there was a mishap and didn't end up being that way. And it can literally derail me.
Hmm.
Or like if a kid gets sick and I have to then change my plans for the day, it can derail me.
Mm.
Or even like if I get invited. So like there's been weeks where I've had friends who literally on a Monday or a Sunday will be like, "Hey, does anyone want to grab dinner on Tuesday?" That gives me
Mm.
anxiety. There's no way I can just do that. It doesn't fit in what I have planned. It
Game
doesn't
planned
in
out.
my week. I need like 3 weeks notice to be like, I'm going to dinner on the 17th.
Yeah.
It is the first. Like
Yeah.
I need many, many, many weeks.
Yeah.
So unlike very much like our children, like I need transition time. I struggle with like if I'm in the right in the middle of something and then I have to stop, it's very tough for me, especially with hyper focus and like getting into things. And so I think that's part of my frustration with the tempo of my life right now is that there's a lot of start stop
Mm.
because I'm 75% mom, full-time mom, and 25%, but maybe even less, like 85% full-time mom and 15% starting to go back to work. So I can't do all the things I want to do. So I
Yeah.
get frustrated easily.
Okay. Cool. What are the gifts ADHD gives you?
I just named one, right? Is hyperfocus. So I can get things done, especially if I'm interested in them and do them well within like a very short
Yeah.
time period. I can also learn a lot about something in a very short time period and then completely forget all about it. I was in this I was with this neurodivergent coach and she's like, I'm going to talk about neural pruning, but I know you have a PhD. So like if you don't want me to, if you're bored, I'm like, pretend I don't have one because I don't remember anything from my doctorate. Is
You
how
remember
I
something.
know I
I think
genuinely
it's
do.
there. It's one moment that it comes up.
Yeah, but for like, yeah, totally. It's back there for sure.
Yeah.
But I can learn a lot about the things that I'm interested in.
Yeah, your skill acquisition is crazy. Your ability to acquire new skills.
Really?
It's fast.
Is it? It's
Yes.
like Jakey.
Yeah. You can acquire skills very quickly because you're so hyper focused and you get so down to like you research and you get down to it and you'll spend the uninterrupted time doing it.
Hmm. I have a question for you after we finish this one. I would say I make connections really. My connections are funny because like it's like how did you get from this one thing
Yeah.
all the way over here? Like I feel like I know instantly about something and I can see 9 different pathways to take.
Yep.
So connections are cool.
I think that actually helps with your creativity too.
Yeah.
That you're able to connect things that maybe other people wouldn't connect. I think it's a strength and a weakness at times because you connect things that should not be
True.
connected and it makes you go down
Yeah.
this rabbit hole of
What ifs?
what ifs and all that, but it might not be a good connection. So it's a strength and a weakness.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Creativity, connections, hyper focus. I'm very empathetic
Yeah.
most of the time. But I am like I am
Mm.
an empathetic person.
Two weaknesses
Two
sometimes as well.
But I feel like to that one of my biggest values is about inclusion.
Mm.
And I think part of it is because of feeling left out or feeling excluded, feeling different.
The
But
rejection
I don't
thing
want
you talked about.
anybody to feel that way. So I really struggle with, I think sometimes social circles because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I want to invite everybody, but the whole dynamic doesn't always work like that. So empathic. I think I'm smart.
It's really smart.
I think I'm smart. I think I'm maybe not necessarily book smart. I don't know. Maybe I am, but I don't know.
You got a PhD.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not easy to get a PhD.
But I think I did that for other reasons.
I know, but you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
What were you gonna ask me?
I was gonna ask you what you see the gifts of ADHD are.
I think
Or my gifts, I
as I
guess.
said, I think one, the ability, your hyper focus and the ability to research, acquire new skills, because you have to learn a lot of new skills in your entrepreneurial journey that you've been on. You've had to learn a bunch of new skills, and if you set your mind on it, you'll get after it and you'll spend the uninterrupted time and hours, and you'll figure out certain things. So I think that's a big gift of yours. Yeah, the connections thing. Sometimes like there's connections that are really good connections that I can't even make, which I think is pretty awesome. And like something think is I do a decent job at is like how to connect different ideas and put them together, but you do a really good job of that. Other strengths.
Not many, huh?
There's a lot, but you like mentioned all the ones that I see too. Like you are very compassionate and empathetic. Sometimes that it hurts you, but you really see other people's point of views and perspectives, which I think is a beautiful gift. I think it's maybe I think this is a strength, but I don't know if that's how you were raised or it's part of your ADHD, but like having the tough conversation that you need to have or standing up for things that are right that need to be, that maybe not individually wrong or something with our kid or something like that. You don't fear confrontation. You don't fear having the difficult, honest conversations. Maybe that's an ADHD
It
thing.
is.
I don't know.
So
So
justice,
yeah.
advocacy, justice,
Yeah,
like
your advocacy skills, I get extremely uncomfortable and I would never do that.
really?
Yeah, for sure. I don't like having anything that creates conflict, I don't like. You know that about me. Like, I'd
But
rather you
has there been an actual conversation that you were like really uncomfortable in?
tons. So many. You know this. You've had to push me to have certain conversations that I didn't want to have before.
Can you give me an example of one?
Like there's like sons at work that I need to advocate for myself that I haven't done before. That I don't want to go
I
have.
thought you were talking about like that you've been informed with me.
I'm sure there's some when I see you and we're like in person and you're like having one of those moments, I get uncomfortable. Yeah, for sure.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's a gift.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. I think you kind of answered this. Maybe you want to go more specific, but are there specific situations or experience that overwhelm you more than others?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure. Big group events, especially if I'm feeling inadequate in that group event. I thought that I like loved that.
mm,
Like I thought that I was like a social butterfly going from person to person. And at one stage in my life, having those superficial small talk conversations were great. And why were they great? Because alcohol was attached, right?
we talked about that
And
before.
so now they're really hard for me because I don't have small talk. Like, small talk is draining.
It's hard.
It's really, really hard. I want to go right into the deep shit. So it's like really tough.
Yeah.
So, um,
Social settings, what else?
social settings,
Decision making?
I would say things that I have not. Okay. One of my gifts and probably a challenge is honesty
Mm,
and like radical honesty sometimes. I don't have a filter all the time. Like I've really learned to find more of a gate,
mm,
but things still get through. And so two things are really hard. One is when I don't understand a social situation,
mm,
and two, that I can't be honest about it.
mm,
I cannot be myself.
mm.
I completely shut down. I don't, it's like I'm like robot that's like cannot,
Unplugged.
I'm unplugged. And they're really tough because I want to just have that honest conversation like, hey, like this is really weird
Mm.
between us or something.
Because also in your brain, like we talked about, it's just going through, it's going on your head and you can't get it out.
Oh yeah,
And
the
that's the
hyperactivity.
hyperactivity of the brain.
And so when I can't have, so sometimes I've had these situations when I was younger, they would come out and these, like I would hold together, hold together, hold together, hold together. And then all of a sudden it would be a huge outburst with like, several friends I can think of at the top of my mind that like I was so hurt by something or something that happened and I never said anything. And so
And it would
it
come out.
became this huge deal. Or other times it was based in alcohol, like getting really fucked up and then having these conversations. Like that's never the way to do it. And so I think that's one of my biggest challenges is social norms and my honesty. When I was in college, I would say things how they were. And I thought, isn't that what friends do? Like, don't friends say, like, I think that guy's bad for you? Don't
Yeah.
friends say you're better than
Back to our last episode, honesty.
And so I learned that that wasn't okay.
Mm.
And that would hurt people.
Yeah.
And even though they got hurt by other people, I had a very eye-opening experience where I did share that with someone and it changed the entire friendship.
Yeah.
And from then on, I would call them little white lies of like, I can't tell the truth because I will hurt somebody.
Mm.
And so I think that's also where I struggle with this honesty thing and building relationships or trusting other people what they say is because
You know your experience. Yeah.
yeah, and like why would somebody be honest with me? If I know that I can say the superficial thing, there are few people today and who have literally said to me, I know that I can say anything to you and you won't judge me and you will tell me how it is. And I can be myself with those people. But there are other people
Yeah,
where,
but that's gonna be far and few for anybody.
yeah,
That's
for
just
sure.
the far and few.
So that's ADHD or not, but part of ADHD is impulsivity and not always thinking before you speak. And so as a child, not knowing how to regulate that and also not understanding that that may how that would go
Social
across
norms.
social norms. So it was really hard. So now, so that was a thing is that when I'm not able to be honest and there's a social situation that I don't understand.
Cool. All right. What have I done in certain circumstances that have been helpful to support you?
Like I mentioned earlier, body doubling, so helpful for me. We can do things together, walking me through something. There are certain things that really don't make sense, or it's that I'm so overwhelmed with the information.
Mm.
I don't know how to simplify it, and I need it to be broken down. And I feel like something that you simplify things. When I had that meeting with the neurodivergent coach, she brought up how neurotypical brains, we go through something called neural pruning. And basically, that's like weeding through all the information in your brain that you don't really need. So, like, think about a garden and you're wanting to make
Yeah.
it more efficient, you get rid of the weeds. So, neurotypical brains prune 50% of their neural pathways. So, like, they really clean out a lot. Whereas neurodivergent brains only prune 16%,
Hmm.
which leaves 86% of these like this stuff,
84.
84%. ChatGPT told me it was 86, but 84%. Yeah. 84% of that stimuli in their mind. And so like,
Still there.
there's a lot of fucking shit going on in there, right?
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And so sensory information, it's like a very overwhelming and so forth. Neurotypical brains can think in a linear way. So you can break all these things down, like you said in the very beginning of the episode, like step A, or like A to B to C
Yeah.
to D. Neurodivergent brains start with details and then gradually move to the big picture. I actually think I'm like big picture, and it's actually so overwhelming. Like I forget about the small things
Yeah.
where
You just want to be
autism.
there. Yeah. You just want
Yeah,
to
I
be
just
there.
want to be there. But Jake is like more like she put it in this way where a neurotypical person would walk into a room and they would see four walls and some windows and a closet, whereas a autistic brain would walk into a room and see a vase.
Hmm.
And then they'd be like, oh, there's some walls in here. Oh, there's like this thing, but they'd be so focused on the details.
Hmm.
Where an ADHD person, when I walk in here, I think it's more of a feeling. I'm like, it feels really cluttered. It feels really overwhelming. Anyways,
Emotional.
to come back to what I wanted to say to you. So a neurotypical brain is linear and a ADHD or autistic and neurodivergent brain is multidimensional. And so my A is on this level, B is on 3 floors up, C is down in the basement, D is back at where A is. So it's like very all over the place. And we can enjoy multiple parts of that dimensional train. Whereas, like, it's really easy for you to complete a task because at the end of completing a task, you're like, yippee, I feel good. I checked it off. Where someone like myself, I may have really enjoyed B. I may not really enjoy D, the finished product. I actually really enjoyed the B, which is maybe like organizing the space. But I don't really care about putting it away. That makes sense. Like I really like putting it all on the bed to like put stuff away, but I don't actually want to go put it away.
Yeah.
So it's hard to complete tasks. And so knowing that, wait, oh my God, I literally don't remember the question.
What have I done that's been helpful to support you? ADHD is real.
I'm like, did I go on like a complete
I think you're saying me being logical and helping you walk step through steps.
So the idea is
Yeah.
like helping me through things or like keeping me accountable on like executive functioning, helping me through those things is really helpful.
Cool.
That partnership is key. Sometimes I like forget to eat, drink water, take care of myself.
The human needs, yeah.
Yeah, so like
I tell you that. I'm like, hey, remember yourself to eat.
yeah, and like water and things like that. And then I would say sometimes, like, I know you don't love this yourself, but just making decisions for us because it feels really overwhelming for me to make decision. And I can understand why it feels overwhelming for you because you're worried you're going to mess up. But for me, it feels paralyzing. Like I won't end up making any decision. So sometimes, like, I literally plan outfits. Like, I know I have an event coming up. I literally plan the outfit weeks and weeks and weeks.
Because you've
before.
learned from not doing that.
So I'm done now. It's done.
Yeah, don't change your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a couple more questions here for you, Nick. What have I done that has not been helpful?
Sometimes we can call it toxic positivity. Like the other day, you were talking to somebody about like just getting up at 5 a.m. Like you can get up earlier. It's not a big deal. You can do it. It's that lack of compassion or awareness of that other people have a different way of being is hard. Like
Hmm.
I'm wired at night. So I'm gonna I've been much better about shutting the computer down and getting into bed and trying to go to sleep before midnight. But if I'm super hyper focused on something, I'm not going to rest until it's done. There have been times I've stayed up all night to finish a website. There's not times I can't stop. And so when it comes to
Is that the executive functioning piece?
what that can't stop, that's hyper focus.
Hyper focus. Okay.
Yeah, so I can't, it's like very hard to break.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I won't move from the same spot.
Yeah.
I won't eat.
Which is a
Like,
gift and a weakness.
yes.
Both. Yeah.
Yes.
We talked about.
So I think you just coming from a compassionate lens, like what works for me may not work for somebody else, specifically me. So telling me that, like, you just got to do this, but it doesn't work like that for
But
me.
isn't that decision making?
Decision making, do you want to go here for dinner or here for dinner?
Yeah.
You just making a decision, we're going to go here is helpful.
Okay.
In regards to what you just asked, it's not. But sometimes, like, I had a roommate in college that I need you to help me plan my day. So she would literally help me plan my day. And it was really helpful. But now I have ChatGPT, so you're off the hook.
I know she actually helps. Gets me off the hook a lot more.
ChatGPT.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
She's like my buddy. We talk all the time.
All the time.
I share.
Probably great. So thinking of how I've said Instagram is not good for an ADHD brain, actually ChatGPT is probably extremely helpful.
It's been really, really helpful. And they actually, ChatGPT for an ADHD brain can be helpful in something we were talking about earlier, social norms, understanding social experiences. I have put in, I can't even tell you how many things that I've written about that have like hurt my feelings or that I was confused about or like what could be my response be. Damn, I should have done that just recently. I didn't even think about using it.
Yeah.
Fuck. Anyways, I've used that to help me craft a response that I want or help me understand what this could have meant or how to let it go. I had a painful experience that came up about something just the other day. And I was like, why does this hurt so bad? And like, how can I move through it? And she gave me all this stuff. It was like free therapy. And she's very nice. So I really like her.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, last question before we wrap this thing up. So obviously, I think you mentioned coming into your 36 years really when you started to have a relationship with ADHD. What's been your biggest realization or biggest learning as you're navigating this journey about yourself?
That I'm not a problem.
Hmm.
I'm not broken. I'm not dysfunctional. There's nothing wrong with me. It's that my brain is different.
It's a powerful learning.
It is. And that only is because of Jake. Again, I don't know if I would have even tapped into this
He's our gift.
without having a neurodivergent child. I really don't think so. So that what that gives me is more leeway, more grace, more permission to do things a certain way, to acknowledge that this is the way I need to do it. It's okay that it looks like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I would say that it's really just allowed me to see that my brain works differently and that it's not a problem.
Cool. It's beautiful. Anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
Yeah, so I would say like that's my biggest personal learning, but something else that I think is really important that just kind of came just recently was about Instagram and how my brain and Instagram are a bad mix. I think there can be ways it can be exceptionally creative and wonderful, but for me personally right now in this part of my story, it is not beneficial. And I was researching why Instagram can be more difficult with somebody with ADHD. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, it's crazy. So like first is the constant dopamine hits, right? Like Instagram is constantly providing likes and notifications and comments, and you're like always engaged, which an ADHD brain likes, right? And needs. So this can make it hard to stop scrolling. It's very overstimulating. And so getting off of it and recalibrating yourself to be in the exact moment and being in reality it's hard. Really, really hard. And it brings up a lot of emotion, right? It brings up a lot of feelings of inadequacy. And so it brings you into this comparison trap of people are doing better than me. They make better pies than me. They like this is perfect. Their home looks like aesthetically perfect, like all these different things. And I internalize that deeply.
Yeah, especially with the
right?
perfectionism we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And like time blindness. So that's one of an ADHD person's downfalls, like how much time am I actually spending on this, right? And then difficulties setting boundaries with it. And so all of those five things are areas that I can honestly say it does impact me.
It's like made.
It's made for me.
Made for you.
It's made
It's
for
making
me.
other people more like they have tendencies of ADHD. I feel like
100%.
it's giving people that expectation of that immediate, that switch of focus that can get sucked into something for so long,
Yeah.
right?
So I'm grateful to have taken a break from it. I don't feel pulled to be on it. Actually, I have been telling myself I don't want to feel the way I feel when I'm on there.
Yeah.
So that's what's keeping me off.
It's really big. Proud of you for that.
Yeah.
There's your reinforcement.
You're
super proud of you.
Great. Thanks, Jarrod. I needed it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for spending some more time with us on this episode. Love to hear your perspectives, thoughts, likes, comments. Let us know.
Give us those dopamine hits.
Give us those dopamine hits so we can enjoy them. We appreciate you guys.
And have a great rest of your day.
Bye.